Coach, you've got the attention of a lot of coaches right now that are trying to be the best that they can be, right? And they want to have longevity like you've had, and they want to have success like you've had. What did you do in the off season to continually stay sharp, to be the best that you could be, to continually challenge yourself? Were there some books that you read? Did you go to other coaches? For the coaches that are watching this video, Sunday Soul, give them some tangible advice of ways they can continually improve themselves.
Well, I think, there's probably a lot of things. A lot of people know more about it than perhaps I do. Some might think I'm somewhat tunnel vision, which in some cases might be accurate. But I think there's a number of. I can just tell you what I have done. First and foremost, there is no off season. And I've always seen it that way.
You're right. You're right.
But I think, first and foremost, you have to think about what your priorities are, and your faith and your family become so significant in your life. And it's so important to step back and make sure that that you're investing, the time and the effort and the sincerity that is necessary in order to make that dramatic part of your life. I think in terms of the career field or the profession itself, I know when I was a high school coach in Southern California, there were up and down the coast, there were coaching clinics every weekend. There might be 52 weeks out of the year, there might be as many as 4, 5, or 6 somewhere along the Southern California coast. And I used to attend those. That was, to gain just football knowledge, learn about the subject, that you're teaching, and hear about it from a variety of different people that you had great respect for and grew up admiring, and understanding that there's a lot of different types of thoughts, that go into it. Everybody doesn't agree totally, but to be able to collect all that information, I think really was beneficial to me. And those kind of opportunities don't exist, as much anymore.
Okay.
I encourage, young coaches who ask me, I encourage them to be able to go out and search for opportunities to learn. Go visit other schools.
Yep.
Learn to bring, going back to what I mentioned much earlier, bring people into your life that can help make your life better. And so you have to reach out and find those people. It's reciprocal. You have to be able to, or it's important, I think, to be able to want to reciprocate, but to find those people, coaches in this regard, at different universities that are so willing to sit down and visit with someone. I think that's a significant thing to do. I think the interaction with your players, there's limitations on what can be done, but I think to continue to strive, this thing about developing a value system that will be the foundation for your lifetime successes, it's a 24-hour, it's a 24/7, 365 procedure.
Yep.
Consequently, you can't back away from it in certain times, and so you have to find that way that you can provide more teaching, if you will, for lack of a better word, when young people are not with you, like during this time. Now, the rest of the time, they're all right there on campus with you, and there's, you have ways to be able to interact with them in order to do that. But in a time like now, that's not the case. Like I said, one of those things is, is being responsible people and accountable. And one of the things that they can do to provide leadership for other young people is to get them to become responsible and accountable as
Yes.
far as doing the right things in the
Yep.
situation that we're in right now. So.
I love it. I love it. That's, listen, I always say, my mom used to say, I should say, don't ever get too big for your britches. And what do I mean by that Southern saying? I mean that the moment you think you know it all, the moment you think you've got it figured out, right, is the moment that somebody's going to come in and knock you off your perch or your pedestal. And so for me, I am a lifelong learner. I am a lifelong seeker. I'm a lifer when it comes to relationships. I'm not in it. I want to know people. I want to laugh. I want to learn. And I think the same goes with coaching, or for a CEO that's watching this, or a stay-at-home mom that does homeschooling. And a lot of people are homeschooling right now. But I think one of the keys, and you just demonstrated that beautifully, is if you're constantly seeking out other people and they're the ways they do it, you're learning, right? You're continuing to grow. And I think that's a way to stay sharp and at the top of your game.
True story.
All right. So I've got some questions here from some fans. Joel Sears says, is there a moment in coaching and teaching that you were hooked, that made you fall in love with teaching young people? Or was it something that you always wanted to do?
Well, there's probably a two-part answer to that. In terms of coaching, I can't ever remember believing that I was going to do anything other than coach. When my mother invested me in the YMCA, and I learned all kinds of sports and began coaching before I was out of high school, it was just my belief that that was what I was directed to do. And I never thought about any other career. I just labored under the assumption that that's what I was here for, was to coach, and that's what I was going to do. And that's exactly the way it worked out, and never looked back at one time. So.
All right. Matthew Mosley says, over the years of your career, how did you stay relevant with your team? Was there something specific you used consistently, a book or a technique?
Well, I would take that question to mean, because I've been in it 500 years. Are you staying up with the times? As the game of football tends to change a little bit, and human nature tends to want to change on a somewhat regular basis. And how do we stay attuned to what young people are embracing at that particular point in time in their life? And from a football standpoint, we were always seeking out the different things that you might be able to do. I'm just talking about a technical standpoint of football, which this really isn't all about. But we were a program that had difficulty getting the top players in the country. So the significant thing for us was that we had to take guys that had a value system, that had a desire to work hard, were willing to make a commitment, were going to be good young people, and would be unified with their teammates, would be a good teammate, et cetera, all those things. And then try to do the best we could to teach them, and for them to find that way every single day of their life to become a little bit better, and carry that over to the other facets of their life as well. So their growth during the period of time that they were with us really became, very, very significant. And that was kind of the nature of our program. And they did, and I'm pleased about that. But that was significant for us, that young people just would allow us to provide them with that opportunity to become better every time, every single day, and for them to get invested in wanting to do exactly that. I've strayed away from the question a little bit.
That's okay. Hey, we got your heart. That's what matters. We got your heart. Lucas Broadway, he goes by Broadway Lucas on Twitter, says, having the heart of a teacher is beautiful. How have the teachings changed through the years, and which parts have remained the same?
Interesting question. I don't know if I really, have the answer. I was in the classroom, as a teacher for, I think, 9 years, and took it very seriously. Some funny stories about that, but I think I told you about my Spanish teaching, but nevertheless, I think, teaching is teaching, whether it's in a classroom or it's on an athletic field or it's in the home, wherever it happens to be. And I think first and foremost, the significant thing is to be able to, and I don't think this is a change, I think it's consistent. You have to earn and gain, the respect of those who you're teaching.
Yes,
and,
yes.
That's in athletics. Young people choose to be in athletics not because of people like myself. They choose to be in athletics because of their love for a particular sport, so to speak.
Okay.
So that doesn't necessarily tie them to you outside of just, you've got a responsibility to teach them, and they're there to play and they want to play. So I think you have to gain their respect and allow them to understand. And I say allow, I think you have to teach them to understand that that your first and foremost interest is in their well-being.
Yes.
That you truly, it's not, and that's what I've always tried to share. I've never, we never really talked about winning. I remember and I think I told you this story, when I first came to Kansas State. Kansas State was the losingest program in the history of college football.
Okay.
There was not a player in the program that had participated in a game in which they had won.
Wow.
And it had had a dramatic impact on each individual. And when I would share this with, I think I told you before, the very first day I had the opportunity to meet with them, and there were 45 players on scholarship. That's when you could have 95. So we were less than 50% scholarship. And I told the youngsters, because I wasn't able to stay in town very long because I had some other commitments to make. So I arranged to have a meeting with them. And I remember it like it was yesterday. I shared with them who I was and why I was there, and I told them a little bit about my life, shared about my mother and the variety of other people in my life. And I said, I'm here not to talk about football. I want to get to know you. I want to hear from you. And it was hard to get them to want to get up and share, but eventually they got started, and then I couldn't stop them. And the first young guy got up. I just remember it, like I said, so thoroughly. First young guy got up and he said, Coach, he said, you look around the room, it's late November, which it was, and it's cold out. And I remember I went back and checked. It was 23 degrees out, snow on the ground. And the young guy said, Coach, you look around, he said, it's cold outside. He said, we all have jackets on. He said, but you don't see a leather jacket. Mm. He said, we all have them. He said, but we're too embarrassed to wear them. Mm. And another young guy got up and he said, Coach, he said, there's an area in Manhattan called Aggieville. He said, Coach, you won't know what that is, but that's where all the students go on the weekends and after ball games to have a good time. And he said, none of us go. He said, we're too embarrassed to do that. Third young guy got up and said, Coach, he said, after ball games on Saturdays, he said, none of us go to classes on Monday. And another young guy got up and he said, Coach, he said, not many of us go on Tuesday either. And it was just on and on and on like that. And I did a check on their grades and got back a report a couple of weeks later, and every single one of them had their GPA had gone consistently down from the time they'd entered the university until that point in time. Mm-hmm. So my point was that, the fact that they had been so unsuccessful had impacted virtually all of their lives. Yes. In many, many ways. So I took the youngsters out to the field and had them turn the scoreboard on.
Okay.
And I pointed out to them, I pointed at the scoreboard and I said, I am not going to assess you on what it says on that scoreboard.
Wow.
I said, but I will assess you on your capacity to improve every single day that you're here.
Wow.
In these areas. And I mentioned what I felt their priorities should be. And it included being on the football field. And at the end of the season, they had won one game. That was it. And I received telephone calls from everybody I knew. And they were all saying the same thing. You had better get out of there while you can. And if you don't, you're going to be selling insurance in a heartbeat. And I said it publicly, I have never been more convinced that this group of young people in this program will be successful. And I related back to the fact that they found a way every single day to improve themselves, and certainly did. And it carried over. The next year they won 4 games, and the next year they won 5, and then they won 7, and then they won 9, and then they won 10, and then they won 11. I don't know, 6 years in a row, 6 out of 7 years, something like that. But it was just, it didn't blossom out of the sand like Las Vegas. It just got gradually better and better and better, which was the premise, that we were trying to expose them to.
Yeah.
We're in a, they've it's said so often that it's a generation of instant self-gratification. I want it now. If I can't have it now, I'm moving on to something else. Sad way to live a life. But the fact that they got just a little bit better each day, there was some success on their plate that they could see.
Yes.
And was a stepping stone to try to find that second step of improvement, and then the next step and the next step. And pretty soon they were getting close to, what they had hoped to achieve, reach their goals, so to speak.
I got to tell you, I'm sitting here almost speechless. And that is very, very hard to do for a talker like me, somebody that made my career for many years being a talker. But I find myself somewhat speechless because I'm hearing these lessons. I know that there are coaches out there that are hearing these lessons. And here's what I want to say about that story. When somebody radically believes in you and your potential, it does something deep down in your soul, Coach. And when you said, I'm not going to judge you by the scoreboard, but I'm going to judge you by your improvement and seeing that you improve, that is everything. It's everything. And I think if we, during this time and the rest of our lives, can be radical believers in people, radical believers in the good of another human being, man, the better off we would be. And what you reminded me of, the coach you reminded me of today, you reminded me of Dabo Sweeney when he took the job as an interim, right? He kept talking about their improvement, how they improved in their GPA and all the things they were doing. And he believed no matter what, like, you know, people were saying this and he was an interim and all those things. He believed radically in his players and the program and the possibility. And I was on that field with a college football playoff when they got that modern day national championship. And it, you know, for me, I love hearing your story, and then I also love correlating it to a modern day coach like Dabo Sweeney. Another guy that comes up for me is PJ Fleck. Believes, just absolutely believes. Coach, thank you for sharing that story, because it brought me, I teared up and it almost made me speechless. And I know so many people that are going to be listening to this are going to feel the same way. Well,
thank you. You're very gracious, dear.
All right, one more question from the audience. We're going to wind down here. Ryan Hall Wright says, with a career and the longevity that you've had, Coach, how do you evolve as a coach in terms of relating to a college kid when you were in your 40s comparatively towards the end of your career? How did you have to evolve as a human being?
Well, you know, I retired one time before. And that's after I'd been in the program for 18, 20 years, something like that. And I came back. And again, I came back because of the people. But so many, that same question was asked at that time. You know, how are you going to relate to, you know, young people when you're of a significant age, you know, and they're so much younger than you? And I said, you know, it's pretty simple. I said, if the young people in this program, you know, believe in hard work, if they believe in commitment, if they believe in discipline, if they believe in responsibility, if they believe in being good people, if they believe in trying to improve in all facets of their life that are important, and a number of other of those values, I said, if they believe in those things, we will have no difficulty whatsoever. I can relate to that.
Yeah.
Now, if they don't believe in that, then I'm going to have some trouble, because that's how I'm built. And that's exactly the way I felt about it. You know, those are things, you know, a lot of things may change, but some things that don't change are those values. You know, you still want to care about people. You know, you still want to be a responsible individual. You still want to be accountable for your actions, and on and on and on. Those are values that never get old. Those are values that have been with us forever. You know, like I said, those, you know, 16 goals for success, Wildcat goals for success. It wasn't rocket science. You know, like I said, they're exactly the same things that your mother and father taught you, and my mother tried to teach me, and so on down the road. But it's a matter of, they are important. You know, they were important when I was born in 1939, and they're every bit as important right now. And so it's being able to, I think, realize what is significant. Now, you know, how do you relate those things to young people? I think it's maybe that has changed over the years. You know, it's important. I think the communication aspect becomes highly significant. You know, there are things that I didn't know. I've gone through my life that way. But to be able to sit down with a young person and ask, and to get a young person to see that you have been open and honest, and that's setting the example, so to speak. You know, and you know, obviously, if they were able to find things that I had been dishonest about, there would be no reason to trust me.
Right.
if I had been open and honest, and sometimes saying things that they didn't want to hear, nevertheless, being honest about it, they may not like some of the things they've heard, but they would certainly be able to say, he's going to tell the truth. He's going to be honest about it. And consequently, when you have that feeling of being trustworthy, then you've probably got their attention well enough that they will hear what you have to say.
Coach, I ask this to all of my guests at the end of the show, and that is so much of what we do with this movement, so much what I focus on is the soul. What are some things that you do on a daily basis to tend to the garden of your own soul, to take care of you, to make sure that Bill Snyder is doing okay?
Well, that's an interesting story, because there's probably been a significant period of time in my life where I really didn't do as much of that as I could have. Not that I did bad things.
Yeah.
I didn't necessarily. It was just not always doing those things that best keep you to be the person that you desire to be. I think, and again, it goes back to what your priorities are. And for me, my faith and my family. So for me to pay attention to those things is important. From a family standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
We have 5 children,
Okay.
9 grandchildren, and 4 great-grandchildren. My children, from the day one, when they're all adults and no longer in the house, I call each one of them every day. Still do.
I love it.
So, every single day. Do I miss touching base with them from time to time? Yes, they're gone or whatever the case may be, but I call them every day. And that's important to me. And I'm getting to the point where I'm doing the same thing with our grandchildren. The great-grandchildren are all too young to pick up the phone, so that'll come in time. But it's those types of things, staying attuned to your family becomes important. I think taking care of your health, is a good thing to do. I've never been a big eater in my life, so weight has never been a problem. And I went through a bout with cancer, and so that took some weight off as well. And but I do, take care of myself from an eating standpoint for the most part. Exercise every day, get on treadmill for, I think I'm up to 54 minutes every time, and lift weights during the same time. I hate to waste time. That's always been significant in my life. And so I walk on the treadmill and do exercises with the weights at the same time. But anyway, and then from a faith-based standpoint, I'm in prayer daily. Staying attuned to our community. I'm still involved with a number of the entities that I've mentioned to you earlier. Also some things with some of the organizations and youth organizations in particular in the community. So anyway, I can go on and on, but
I love it. I'm over here taking notes in my mind. Lastly, Coach, what would you like to leave with our audience to focus on? Maybe a nugget for this week, because the reason why I chose to do this on Sunday versus Monday morning motivation, to do Sunday is a reflective time. Sunday is also a time to look forward to the week. Sunday is a time to get contemplative. A lot of times it's a time to rest. And so people are thinking about it, at least I do, and I know a number of people that plan out and look towards their week. Could you leave our audience with a little nugget for the upcoming week?
Well, I don't know if I have any nuggets. I do think it is so significant for people to take the time to sit down and truly reflect on what are the priorities in your life. What's most important to you. Uh, I think in a very quick, story, in trying to help young people in our program define what their priorities are and then base their goals on those priorities, and then define a system by which they can achieve those goals and then actually go to work and do it. It's a process. Mm-hmm. And we procrastinate dramatically. Mm-hmm. And we have some good ideas, but we let them pass us by after a while. And I think being able to really spend some time defining what's important, yeah, in our lives, again, as it centers around your priorities. What are those priorities? Faith, family, school.
I love it.
Athletics, whatever, and define that, and then define in each one, taking the time on a daily basis to go through and define, how can I achieve that? How can I make that priority a successful achievement? How can I reach that goal? And then have something that prods you to do it every day, because there's our list of things to do is monumental, and the list of things that we actually did is much so it becomes significant to have a system by which you don't overload your plate. There's always tomorrow, and yet hold yourself accountable for achieving those things that you desire to achieve in that given day.
Coach, it has been, I feel like I've been to your Leadership Academy all year long in 1 hour. And so I'm so grateful for you and for your time and for your friendship. And I'm grateful that you would come on with me and bless the people that are watching this, that are going to share this around the world right now and beyond this time. But right now, people need inspiration. They need hope. They need positivity. They need wisdom. They need ideas and plans and ways to execute that in their everyday lives. And so I'm so thankful for you and for this time today.
Well, I'm honored and thank you so much. I cherish your friendship, and I love the things that you're doing and how you're reaching out to, it's been around athletes, but you're reaching out to people, and yes, you're making a significant difference in their lives, and you've evidenced that as well, and had the rewards of people sharing with you what yes, you've met in their lives so far. So you're wonderful. Keep it up.